welcome to the City of Port Orchard regularly scheduled July 28th council meeting.
Oh, and Nancy?
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. We'll go right into item 2, citizens' comments. And we do have a sign-up sheet, and nobody signed up. That's all right. If you would like to make citizen comment, please raise your hand to be identified. And come on up and make them. Your comments. Anyone? All right, there'll be another opportunity at the end of the meeting for citizens' comments, so we'll move on to approval of the agenda. Council, what's your
Move to
pleasure?
approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve the agenda. Any other discussion, changes? Yes.
I'd like
Mr.
to add an
Cons-
item to the consent agenda to excuse Mr. Cartwright from tonight's meeting.
Second.
F, add Mr. Cartwright as an excused. Okay, we have a motion and a second to add Mr. Cartwright. Is there any objections, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of adding Mr. Cartwright say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. Is there anything else?
A motion on the floor?
We'll vote on that now.
I think we did have
Yeah, we have a motion to approve the agenda on the floor.
a motion to
Yeah.
add him to it.
Right.
Now, we're back to the main motion, which is to approve the agenda. So unless anybody has anything else to add? Seeing none, then we're going to be approving the agenda as modified. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you, that motion carries. Okay, we're moving on to the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda as amended.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Seeing no other discussion, then we're going to be approving the consent agenda as amended. All those in favor say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, nay. That motion carries. Thank you. All right. It's my pleasure to introduce Mr. Doug Washburn, and he will introduce some visitors with him, and he's going to talk to us about the Consolidated Homeless Housing Plan. Thank you, Mr. Washburn, for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Mayor, for having us. We have our community development block grant staff, and then we also have our homeless and housing staff. So I would like to introduce them to you, and they will
Please
actually
do.
go with the president.
Bring them up if you would.
So we have Kirsten is our homeless and housing staff, and then we have Shannon, who is with the community development block grant program.
Can you not hear? Yeah. I'm sorry, we can't hear you.
I can hear them.
If we speak into the mic, does that work a little better?
That's much better,
And
thank
Can you
you.
hear us if we're like this distance away? Does that work? Okay.
Yeah.
So thank you, Mayor and council members, for giving us some time on your agenda tonight to talk with you about some strategic planning that we're doing right now. I'm here with my colleague Shannon Bauman to talk with you about the homeless housing plan and the Kitsap County Consolidated Plan. As Doug mentioned, my name is Kirsten Jewell. I'm with the Housing and Homelessness Program at Kitsap County Department of Human Services. Somebody else advancing the slides, or is that something that
Yes.
I'm doing?
If you just wait a moment,
Oh, okay.
I think she's adjusting the mic's gain, I think, right now.
So first, I'm going to talk about
And
the...
she'll be right
I'm going
there.
to first talk about the homeless housing plan, and then Shannon is going to talk about the consolidated plan, and then we'd be more than happy to answer any questions and receive any input that you'd like to give us as we move forward with developing these plans. So we have a homeless housing plan in Kitsap County because it's required by Washington state legislation. About 10 years ago, the Washington state legislature passed some legislation that really aimed at giving local communities an incentive and tools with which to really address homelessness. And so the original legislative goal was to reduce homelessness by 50% over 10 years. We're at the 10-year mark here in 2015, and unfortunately we haven't met that goal of reducing homelessness by 50%. I think we have a lot more understanding of the complexity of undertaking such an endeavor. And we have a lot more tools and data that help us have a better strategies and ways to approach it. So we have the opportunity to update our homeless housing plan periodically. Our original plan was in response to the legislation in 2005, and we've updated every 3 or 4 years since then. We decided to update it again this year so that it could be at the same time as we're updating the consolidated plan and then also the county and city's comprehensive plans. We want to make all of these plans really work well together. So our plan outlines very specific objectives, strategies, and then action steps that we want to undertake as a whole Kitsap-wide community, all of our jurisdictions together, to address homelessness. And it also provides the basis on which we allocate grant funds to different local community organizations to address homelessness. So as you can imagine, there are a number of stakeholders in the issue of homelessness, including all of you as our government leaders. Citizens are really important in this, as well as people experiencing homelessness and those providing services to people experiencing homelessness. And then, of course, our federal, state, and local funders are also stakeholders. The organization that we're working the most closely with to develop the plan is the Kitsap Continuum of Care Coalition. This is a very active network of all of the different social service providers that are working on homelessness and affordable housing issues in the community. This is a partial list of the 40 or so members of that organization. They come together very actively once a month and also have a number of subcommittees that work specifically on different issues. They provide advisement to our jurisdictions and our program as to what's sort of going on the ground as they're serving clients. And they also assist with various different kind of strategic activities, such as our annual point-in-time count of homeless individuals. Continuum of Care Coalition convened a plan update committee, and they've been working very diligently over the last several months to receive lots of different kinds of input. We've been looking at data that we've collected from a couple of different sources about the scope of homelessness and what kinds of programs are really effective in our community. We're also having a number of different input opportunities with different Kitsap stakeholders, such as meeting with county commissioners and mayors and city councils. We've also done some surveys of our provider group, as well as surveying people experiencing homelessness. And then lastly, we're looking at evidence-based practices, what is being research that's coming forward from national and state initiatives around what's effective practices for ending homelessness. And we're also looking at other counties' plans to make sure that we're consistent with what's going on around the state. So the update committee laid out a pretty ambitious timeline, and as you can see, the blue box at the bottom there, we're kind of in that July-August area where we're doing stakeholder input and collecting data, and then we'll be releasing it for public comment towards the end of September and October, and then it will go to the county commissioners for final approval. So I'd like to think of the purposes of the plan as really making sure that our community efforts are all focused in the same direction. There is a lot of different possible strategies and activities that we could undertake, and we need to make sure that we're all working together on this in the same direction. Our plan also provides a blueprint for implementation, providing some specific action steps that we're going to undertake. And it's also a tool for advocacy as we talk with you as our elected officials at the local level, and also our county officials and our state and federal officials. We can say, this is what we're doing here in Kitsap County to really address this serious issue. And lastly, it's a really important reference point for our citizen advisory groups who are making recommendations about how funding should be allocated. When I got together and started to meet with the Homeless Housing Update Plan Committee, we laid out some sort of overarching goals for the plan this year, and the idea is to make this a very ambitious plan. We want to be aspirational and strategic. We also want to make it actionable. It's very easy to lay out a long list of things you'd really like to do, but we want to make sure that we have some action items that are specifically attached to some of those strategies, things that we think that we can carry out here in the short term, and we want to make sure that the things that are being recommended in the plan are really going to be effective. And we want to do it all in 20 to 25 pages. The last plan that we produced in 2012, I had a strong hand in writing, and it was 100 pages long, and I was really, really proud of that 100 pages. But unfortunately, when you have such a long document, it's hard to be very accessible to people. So our goal here is to be very streamlined and provide the majority of the plan to be action-oriented. Oh, I'm sorry. No, we're back on that one. The plan format. So we're going to have essentially a brief progress report and then look at sort of the current state of homelessness right now, provide some key demographics and statistics, look at what kinds of resources we have available to us, and then where are the gaps that we're still seeing in our homeless response system. And then the majority of the plan will be our strategic action plan with some performance indicators attached so we can keep reflecting on how much progress we're making towards our goals. So the goal of the plan is to work together as a community to make homelessness rare, brief, and one time in Kitsap County and ensure that our homeless response system is efficient and effective as possible. We don't talk so much about ending homelessness these days. We talk about making it rare, brief, and one time because I think there's a growing recognition that there are such a large number of factors, socioeconomic factors, medical issues, and that contribute to people experiencing homelessness, and we don't necessarily have control over those. But what our homeless response system does have control over is making sure that once people are experiencing homelessness, we can respond as quickly as possible and help them move back to self-sufficiency. So the way our plan is formatted, we decided to actually take those rare, brief, and one time and make those our key objectives. So under the first objective, making homelessness rare, we will have some strategies that really look at how do we prevent people from experiencing homelessness. And then we'll have an objective that looks at how do we make homelessness brief. And this is really getting at our crisis response. How do we get people quickly moved into emergency shelter? And for those whom it's appropriate, perhaps moved into mental health situations or permanent supportive housing if that's what's appropriate. And then we want to look at how we can make homelessness one time. And this really focuses on making sure that we have enough affordable housing and permanent supportive housing and kind of long-term solutions that once people are beyond the crisis stage and moving to stability, we have opportunities for them in housing. Then we want to continuously improve our homeless response system. So looking at what we're already doing today, taking the strategies that are working well, building on those, doing more of that, and adding some more coordination and collaboration to make our system as efficient as possible. And I think there's, when we talk to a lot of different folks in the community to ask for their input, one of the other emerging themes is really we want to do a better job of engaging our community in this issue. We want to do a better job of communicating about what the challenges are and what progress we're making addressing homelessness and what gaps we still have. So we can do a better job providing that kind of information and engaging our community. And so we'll lay out some strategies for how to do that. So we had, as I mentioned at the beginning, a number of different opportunities for input, and we are having a couple of stakeholder events next week that you are all invited to attend. I'm happy to send some more information to your council if you would like. We'll have one at the Paulsbo City Hall in the north end of the county next Tuesday evening at 6:30. And then we'll have one the following morning on August 5th at 9 a.m. at the Norm Dix Government Center. Citizens are invited to participate, people who are experiencing homelessness, elected officials. Really, this is an opportunity where we'll do a little bit more of an expanded presentation, presenting a little bit more data and statistics around homelessness, expand on the objectives that I spoke about, and then do some breakout groups that will let people have discussion about what kinds of things they want to make sure are in the plan. And this will be one of, in addition to our presentations to city councils, this will sort of wrap up our input phase of the plan. So we are, so some of the input and priorities and issues that we've heard pertaining to the South in particular are that we need more services in the South part of the county is one theme we keep hearing. We need to make sure that we have some zoning that allows for tiny houses and boarding houses. We need to make sure that the projects that we're focusing on in the plan are achievable and produce some short-term results. And we're always needing to look at the bottom line in terms of the return on investment of public funds for what we're getting in the way of addressing homelessness. We need to make sure veterans are well taken care of and are experiencing a quick return to self-sufficiency. And we need to make sure our programs are always looking for sustainability beyond government funding. So Shannon is going to now give some information about the consolidated plan, and then afterwards we'd be happy to entertain any questions that you have. But what we're most interested in is what kind of issues and priorities you feel are very important to make sure that we include in this version of the homeless housing plan and the comprehensive plan.
Thank you.
Need.
Could you lower that just a little bit so that, there we go.
How's that?
Perfect.
Better.
And then holler at us if you
Okay.
would, please.
I can do that.
Okay.
So as Kirsten said, I'm part of an office of two other staff people that administrate the Community Development Block Grant Program and the Home Program. And these are federal funds and that come from HUD to our community. And some of you may already be aware of these funds. We've had them for quite a while in Kitsap County, but we provided a little information in the white paper. And at the end, I'd be happy. We're focusing tonight on the consolidated plan, but I would be happy to answer any questions about CDBG and home funds. So the consolidated plan is a HUD requirement. HUD is the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it's a 5-year plan that really lays out what priorities and strategies your community is going to put in place for the funds. And one of the things that is wonderful about CDBG and home, as federal funds come with a lot of strings. However, in the case of home and CDBG, they really do give local jurisdictions a lot of opportunity to direct the funding towards priorities in their community. And so that's every 5 years we're required to update the plan, and that will help direct the funding for the next 5-year period. So we do a joint plan with the City of Bremerton. City of Bremerton is an entitlement city on its own for CDBG funds, and they're part of our home consortium. So together HUD allows us to work on a regional plan, and so the city is working with us right now on this plan as part of a regional strategy for CDBG and home money. And as I said, CDBG and home are directed primarily at housing and community development. And so the plan really lays out it identifies needs, identifies priorities for community development, housing, and economic development is also a part of that. All the projects that are funded during the 5-year period must meet the goals in the plan. So HUD requires us to report on how we're meeting the goals in the plan, how the projects that are selected each year through the coordinated grant application process address those goals and meet those goals. And so each year we also report on the progress towards meeting those goals. So the plan format, as I said, the 5-year plan that we're working on this year is I think of it as being similar to a comprehensive plan in the land use world. We do a needs assessment, a market analysis. HUD provides us a template for this, and beginning this year, it's an online template that comes with the data already pre-populated, which was extremely helpful. So most of the data that HUD provides is census data on our community, and then we are able to provide additional data. Homeless data comes from the local jurisdiction, but all of the information, all of the data, as well as the outreach process, help inform the strategic plan. And the strategic plan is the piece where we outline the goals and the priorities. The other pieces that you see around the edge, the citizen participation plan lays out our process, our citizen process, how citizens can be involved in our process on an annual basis. The policy plan is sort of, I think of it as the user guide. So for applicants that come for funding every year, the policy plan really provides information about how the funds can be used, who's an eligible applicant, what kinds of projects are eligible, and also we try as best we can to explain a lot of the federal requirements because it does impact sometimes agencies' decision on whether or not they want to apply for funds. So we try to lay that all out in the policy plan. The annual action plan is what will be coming up here in the fall when we, so all of the applications that came in this year during the coordinated grant process, those projects that are funded through that process become part of the projects that are in the annual action plan. So we're in year 1 of the action plan, which is actually funding for next year. So that'll start the 5-year period that this plan is looking at. And the CAPER is short for Consolidated Annual Performance and Evaluation Report, and that's where we report out on what we did in that prior program year. Love those acronyms. So HUD's overarching priorities or focus areas for CDBG and home funds are housing, homelessness, special needs populations, community development, and economic development. And so through this process, we can decide as a community we want to focus on all of those, or we want to focus on some of those areas. And in the past, our plan has been pretty broadly focused, and we've had a lot of goals in all of those areas. This time around, in part because funds have been declining, but also because it feels like it's time to really focus, be a little bit more narrowly focused with the funding. We are going to focus primarily on housing and economic development in our plan. Go ahead. So there's 3 strategies, or priorities, I should say, broad priorities that are laid out in our plan for this year. Preservation of existing affordable housing and construction or acquisition of new housing for very low and extremely low households. In doing the needs assessment and the housing market analysis, it is become very apparent that affordable housing is a critical need, particularly for families below 50% of area median income. Lots of families are struggling, and in that population, we have some of our most vulnerable folks, elderly and single moms and disabled folks that really have a tough time finding housing. And so I should back up a second and say that through CDBG and Home, we fund housing projects for families that are at 80% and below of area median income, and we'll continue to do that. But the focus really is going to be on projects that address that lower end, and particularly special needs populations. As Kirsten was talking about homelessness, part of that continuum of getting people out of homelessness and into housing is having that affordable housing available. The other, increasing economic opportunities for low-income individuals. As we've done outreach and as we've talked to elected officials, that really has been a theme that we've heard over and over again: jobs, 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 and economic opportunity. And so with CDBG, we have a set aside for economic development. We encourage economic development projects. It is a little bit challenging with CDBG to use the funding for economic development, but it is really important, and so we've included it as one of our priorities. We also heard from elected officials and also from the community that services are still important, and one of the things that CDBG allows you to do is set aside 15% of the funding to fund service projects. You don't have to do that, but you can, and so we're going to continue to set aside funding for service projects, and that's things like funding food banks or programs for youth or children and those kinds of things that are targeted, again, to low-income families. Our consolidated planning process really started at the beginning of the year. We had a couple briefings with our Board of County Commissioners. We conducted an online community survey back in February and March and got pretty good participation on the survey. We had a community, we call it a community conversation, a community meeting where we had some discussion time, but we also had some activities to just solicit some input, get people's thoughts on what they see are priorities in the community. We've had meetings with the commissioners and each of the mayors of the cities in Kitsap County. And I've been evaluating data and have been working on the needs assessment and the housing market analysis, as well as now we're making presentations to all of the city councils in Kitsap County. So next week, the draft plan will go out for a 15-day comment period, and so you'll be getting notification from the Department of Human Services at the county to go ahead and take a look at the strategic plan. It'll also have the needs analysis and the housing market analysis attached to it. And this is the first opportunity that everybody will have really to weigh in on the strategic plan part of this whole thing that we call the consolidated plan. Come September, the coordinated grant application process culminates in interviews. We have grant recommendation committees that will be meeting and interviewing agencies and making funding recommendations. And so those recommendations will ultimately result in the projects that get included in the action plan. The action plan is that other piece, the other part of the consolidated plan. So on September 23rd, we're going to begin a 30-day comment period, and that will be on the strategic plan, the needs assessment, housing market analysis, and the action plan, all of it together. We'll have a public hearing with the Board of County Commissioners in November, and then all of this gets submitted to HUD. They have a November 15th deadline for us to submit. And this is actually, the submission of this is really our application to HUD for the money. The money it's an entitlement grant, so we don't actually apply every year, but in essence, when we do the action plan, that is our application, and that's we're telling HUD this is what we're going to do with the funding. So that's my presentation on the consolidated plan, but Kirsten and I both are happy to answer any questions that you have about either the homeless housing plan or the consolidated plan or just in general about the grant funds that we have part of our.
Council?
I
Yes,
do.
Mr. Charles.
Have the other cities already been talked to?
So
Talked to Paulsbo, Bainbridge, and
Paulsbo is scheduled, I think, in 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken, and Bainbridge Island is right after that. And
so you haven't talked to Paulsbo?
not yet.
Paulsbo's next week.
They're coming.
And you also mentioned that applications are already coming through or something?
So the applications for funding, the coordinated grant applications, so that's the agencies that would like to or organizations that would like to receive this money. They've submitted applications. We're reviewing them right now. And the Citizens Committee, the Grant Recommendation Committee that will also review them, will be doing interviews of those organizations in September. Okay. And that group will be who will make recommendations on those specific projects that have been applied for.
Okay, so you mentioned you're making presentations to the councils in the summer, and of course this is now. And then you're mentioning that the draft plan released for public comment is August 4th. That's like 6 or 7 days from now. How does Paulsbo actually have any input?
The strategic plan is going to be released for a 15-day comment period. We're going to send them notice that the plan is open for comment. There'll also be another comment period in September, a 30-day public comment period. And the difference between the two is that come September, you'll have the action plan will be part of the package. Okay. So they'll get notice, though, as soon as next week when the draft goes out. All the city councils will get notice.
I think I have a lot of questions, actually, but not to keep going, because I know these guys have a lot of questions, too. One of the things you said, more services are needed in the south part of the county. Did that mean most services are needed in the south part of the county, or what did that mean? What more services are needed?
Yeah, great question. So right now, the vast majority of the social services that assist people who are low income or homeless are in Bremerton or in Paulsbo. And so some of the feedback we've got is that it would be really great if we could have some social service organizations that are offering those kinds of services here in Port Orchard. Kitsap Community Resources does have a family services support center here in up on Jackson. I was just there this afternoon. And the Kitsap Community Alliance the South Kitsap Community Alliance is also working at doing some assistance for people experiencing homelessness. But transportation is a significant challenge for folks, and so asking people to get to Bremerton can be a challenge. So it would be ideal if a broader range of services was able to be offered here. Did that answer your question?
It did. Let's let the other folks talk.
Mr. Chang, you had your hand up.
I have two questions that are not related. The first one is, can you tell me more about how you're going to solicit feedback from the public? Are you going to be doing it online? And then the second question is a little more open-ended, but I was wondering if you have an idea of where do most of the homeless come from in the county?
So is your first question about the consolidated plan?
Actually, yes.
So the consolidated plan, we did an online survey which was broadcast, and it was all online. What we've typically done, so we have utilized the county's notification system and sent out information that way. Our community meeting that we held, we had a community meeting that was again broadcast out and had people attending. So now the strategic plan, this 15-day comment period, is an opportunity for folks to weigh in on all of the information so far. And then come September, when we have the action plan piece, then again there'll be another a 30-day written comment period, and then also a public hearing.
Do you have a URL that people can go to find out more information or just offer their feedback? Like homelessinKitsap.com or something?
Like a website? We utilize the county's GovDelivery, and all of our information we do post. So the block grant program and the homeless housing program both have web pages that we post on.
And we update regularly, frequently.
We also get information out through Continuum of Care. Continuum of Care organizations, there's a whole laundry list of organizations that are part of Continuum of Care. And then we always, so if people contact us and they want information, then we make sure that we encourage them to sign up for GovDelivery and even walk people through so that they make sure that they're clicking the right boxes so they get the right information. We want people to get the information. Yep.
Other questions?
To your second question, I think, which was about where do people experiencing homelessness come from, I think first I want to just make a distinction, and that is that we collect a lot of information about people who are seeking and receiving homeless housing and services. So I can tell you that of the people seeking housing, homeless, and services, about 50% report that their last permanent address was in Bremerton. About 22% in the last 6 months reported that their last permanent address was in the south part of the county, and I have that breakdown for the rest of the county. What I can't tell you is information about people who are not seeking services, and sometimes these are the very most difficult to serve folks because they have multiple barriers such as mental health, substance abuse issues, physical issues, and they are the ones that you may most often see as well. Folks who are camping or living in their cars or staying in buildings unfit for human habitation. One of the projects that we're working on in conjunction with our initiative to end veterans homelessness is doing some additional outreach between the end of August and the end of September to try to go out and get as much information as those folks are willing to give us about their situation so that we can begin to formulate some tailored strategies. We know we have a lot of folks that we're not offering the kind of services that they're willing to accept, or they're not taking services. So we need to think about how do we get information about those folks so we understand the scope of that issue, and then what are the kinds of things that they would be looking for and willing to participate in. Willingness to participate is a big challenge for some folks, and so we also have that.
You know, when we had other meetings, you explained how you take that the pulse, so to speak, of the homeless on a one day or several days in a year. And it's a moving target, as you can imagine. It's hard to know if you really got an accurate count. You do the best you can under the circumstances, but we're talking homeless people, and how do you find out if you've got there's not really good record keeping going on there as far as,
Have to be willing to want to participate and interact with you to give you their information.
Yeah, and a lot of them don't want to answer questions, do they? In fact, they don't want to answer anything. They go away from authority rather than to it.
So one of our strategies that we're going to try to use in this special outreach project is there are some organizations like the South Kitsap Community Alliance who are already doing some outreach work, providing some sleeping bags or food or kind of basic amenities to folks. So we're going to try to use their relationships that they already have with people and ask them to try to collect a little bit of extra information, because strangers going out and trying to get this information isn't going to be very effective. So we're trying to use the existing relationships already to hopefully gather a little bit more than we already have.
And the South Kitsap Community Alliance is a loosely organized consortium of churches, faith-based, civic, all different kinds. I mean, they're starting to pull together to kind of address the problem. So, it's a start.
It's been wonderful to see them really participating and partnering and trying to understand how they can be part of what's going on in the rest of the county and take lessons learned and apply it, and it's great. Yeah.
Okay, is there any other? Yes.
Kirsten or Shannon, I would like you to, if you would explain for our audience, Port Orchard's responsibility with homelessness and the consolidated housing, and how your organization helps us meet our needs, our requirements.
If I understand. So in terms of responsibility, are you meaning input into the plans, or?
No, our responsibility to address homelessness and address these housing issues, because I know we partner with Bainbridge Island and Poulsbo and the county for these funds and to distribute these funds.
Right.
And I was just wanting kind of an overview of how all of that, how our responsibilities are being met by our partnership with you.
So one of the things, so part of our process with our coordinated grant process is our committees that are appointed. And so there are people who sit on our 2 grant recommendation committees, meaning our capital and our services, that are from Port Orchard. We have folks who represent Bainbridge, Port Orchard, Poulsbo. We have also somebody from Bremerton to represent for homeless projects. CDBG and home projects go to the Bremerton City Council for those. The other thing is, that's part of the reason that we're here today, and also why we met with the mayors. We really wanted to know specifically we know there's differences between our jurisdictions in terms of needs, and we get projects, for instance, South Kitsap Helpline, when they come to us for funding and tell us about the things that they're doing, it gives us a sense of some of the need, especially with food banks, because they are frontline. Lots of folks come to the food banks in all of our different cities, and so we need to understand what the needs are in the cities and what are the most pressing priorities for the city of Port Orchard. What are you seeing? And give us that feedback, and that can help inform our plans, because the plan is where we are going to lay out these are the priorities, and here's how we're going to address them. And it isn't necessarily identical in every city in Kitsap County. Sometimes it's easy to paint the county with one broad brush, but we know there's differences.
You mentioned only that Kitsap Community Resources was in the local area. Actually, they're outside the city, but I did notice that St. Vincent de Paul is on your list of Continuum of Care Coalition. Would you just mention South Kitsap Helpline, which is a great organization in our community, and I don't see them on the list.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this isn't a complete list. It's a
Oh, it's not a
40
complete.
40 organization list, and I just picked some to put up there. So I'd be happy to send you the full list.
Oh, okay.
I know
And
that South Kitsap Helpline, is that?
Yeah, that's-
Helpline, sorry, Fish Line, Helpline, and Food Line. Sorry. They are active food bank in the community and definitely providing some level of supportive services for people. They are a frequent recipient of the CDBG grant funding in South Kitsap.
Mr. Clausen, you had a question, I think.
Kirsten, you mentioned that homelessness is a variety of reasons, health, mental health. In your work, have you developed, is there an age group that you see more than others? I mean, is it seniors, or does it really cross all age brackets?
It really does cross all age brackets. I will say that we do, again, I can only speak to the people who are seeking services. And so as a caveat, I would say in general, folks who are not seeking services, who are unsheltered, tend to be on the older side. But we do know that about 25% of people experiencing homelessness are children under the age of 18. And then it is fairly well distributed between folks who are 21 to 45 and then 45 and older. We are beginning to see a slight aging. So we used to see about 30 or 33% were children, and now we're seeing that slightly moving to be a little bit older. But it definitely touches all age groups. And I think, for me, one of the issues that I'm particularly interested in thinking about is people who have a fixed income, including those who are elderly. And without having enough affordable housing in our community, without opportunities for those folks to be able to go, we can't really expect that they're going to be able to go back to work or to increase their income. They're on a fixed income, maybe because they're not working age anymore, or maybe they have a disability or whatever it is. And so we need to have a bigger stock of affordable housing so that folks who have a fixed income are going to be able to have a place to live. They may be only homeless because they have a limited income, and that's a big challenge across the board. And I think that if you look at the demographics for Kitsap County as a whole, we're being told that generally it's going to be aging here over the next 10 to 20 years, and so we're going to have a larger and larger population that we may see on a fixed income.
Do you have a feel for how much housing we're lacking?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
How much housing do we need to meet the need?
Yeah, and I can't speak for Port Orchard specifically or Port Orchard area
I
specifically.
appreciate South
but-
Kitsap is huge, so.
Right, and there's different zoning, but the Washington State Department of Commerce did a very good study in early 2015, so this year that they released, for every county in the state, they did a survey of affordable housing, and then also cross-referenced that with a number of folks who are living at different levels of income. So they looked at area family income, and what they're projecting or what they're saying, and I'll definitely send this over to you. It's a nice little 2-page graphic. It's their affordable housing needs assessment. But one of the things that I was really interested to find is that they're saying that for households who are really poor, living at 30% or less of area median income, which is about $22,500. So if you have income of $22,500 or less, there's only about 12 housing units available for every 100 that are needed. So we have a giant gap. It also shows that for those who are currently renting, a really large percentage of those at very low income are extremely rent burdened, which means that they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent, which puts them at very high risk of homelessness and other not being able to afford other kinds of essential needs. And so they're estimating about at least 4,500 households in Kitsap County are very rent burdened. And interestingly, about 27 households who are homeowners who are in that very low income category, 2,700 of those households are also paying more than they can really afford for rent. So we have a pretty serious challenge ahead of us with affordable housing if we're going to be able to keep pace with with the income levels of the people in our community. And as I said, I'll send this over to you. If you have any other additional questions, I'm happy to.
The other question I have is, the only rent assistance that I'm familiar with is Section 8. Is that still available? Is it growing any? Is it shrinking, the availability of Section 8 housing?
So Section 8 has a pretty significant wait list. Yeah. I don't have the number off the top of my head. They closed the wait list because it doesn't make sense to just keep adding people when there's really not hope that all of those people, it kind of rotates. And so I don't have that number off the top of my head. I would say it's not growing. What's happening at the federal level with federal policy is, so funds have been declining. And so for HUD, for Section 8 vouchers, which people take a voucher and they go find rental housing, HUD has to keep up with the cost of housing. So those vouchers, even though the number of vouchers may not grow, the cost of that number of vouchers grows. And so HUD has been trying to keep pace with that. And from what I've seen, they try to keep it whole, meaning they're trying to not reduce the number of Section 8 vouchers. The problem with that is it doesn't keep up with the growth in the number of people who need them. So cost of housing is a really large issue.
And I would just add that what we're finding is that that's really compounded by having a very low vacancy rate in Bremerton and the south part of the county, because we have a transient population that has to do with people working in the Navy and the shipyard. When we have a lot of ships in port, our vacancy rate goes down and our rents go up. And then when the ships leave, vacancy rate increases and rents go down. Right now, we're at a time when we have extremely low vacancy rates, I think 3% or less in the Bremerton area. So that, again, makes it more expensive. Our dollars don't go as far to provide housing assistance for people in the private market. And so another challenge is we try to help people.
And you had also mentioned in your presentation, and I was looking at it, tiny houses and boarding houses. Do we have any tiny houses in Kitsap County? And is that number changing at all?
Did you say, do we have any?
Do we have any tiny houses? And could you define tiny house? I think I know what it is, but.
Yeah, I think tiny houses has a really broad definition. It's generally considered to be housing that is, again, I'm sort of guesstimating here about 800 square feet or less, but relatively small, and all the way down to 120 square feet. I mean, very, very tiny to smaller than most people are used to. I think one of the challenges is that and I'm not an expert in this area, but sometimes the code that different jurisdictions have doesn't really allow for tiny houses other than as accessory dwelling units. So we do allow people to build mother-in-law apartments or mother-in-law units, but as a standalone unit on a property, I think that there are currently, as I understand it, in some jurisdictions, some challenges around that. I think there are a number of tiny houses that are existing unofficially and illegally, if you will, because they're a very attractive solution. So they're going to happen anyway. So the question is, and I think the reason that they're being included in our homeless housing plan is that they're seen as a way to provide relatively inexpensive housing for people that is better than sleeping outside or sleeping in their cars. There's a provider of tiny houses in Gorst that I visited with Mayor Mathis last summer, I think it was. So we have the capability to have that kind of housing here, but we haven't really sorted out, I believe, all the zoning and permitting rules around that.
Has that issue been communicated to the various jurisdictions? I mean, we're all working on our comp plans, and
I know that we are talking about it at the county level, at the county comp plan update. I don't know that it's been communicated specifically to the individual jurisdictions. I think there are different. Let me back up on that. Let me take that back a minute. I do know that the Kitsap Regional Coordinating Council had a couple of planning directors meetings where they discussed some of the challenges with tiny houses. And we did also have a forum on tiny houses last October, and we did invite a number of the planning directors to that. And one of the topics of conversation is how could we make these be legal in our community? What kinds of uses would we want to use them for? Because they can be used for everything from putting a number of tiny houses and housing people who are formerly homeless, to just providing housing for people who want to downsize and live in smaller housing than it's currently available. So I guess I take it back. I think the planning directors, at least through those two different opportunities, have been exposed to the idea of it. What they've gone and done with that, beyond that, I couldn't speak to that.
I think the conversation has been mostly with KRCC, Transpo, Transpac, and kind of mixed in with that. For a little while, it seemed to be high on the list of conversation, and lately I haven't heard too much about it. So maybe it's time to bring it back, and get it back on at least somewhere close to the front of the list, maybe to look at. So thank you.
If you're, I have a packet of information that was produced for that tiny house forum, and if there's any interest, I'm happy to share that further with.
Do you have that electronic?
I think so. I'll have to go back.
If you do have it electronic, then if you could send it to the clerk, she could then send it out to the full council, and they could look at it at their leisure then.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I'll see what I have in my files from KRCC. And see that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Childs.
I assume you don't know how much money HUD has available for these purposes, but you did mention Bremerton having, I think I heard you say, approximately 50% of the homeless people, and 23%, like almost a quarter, is in the south, like Port Orchard and South County. Would it be reasonable to assume that of the HUD money that's available, that the South County will get a quarter of it?
So let me just make the distinction. The homeless housing money isn't HUD money. It's state mandated and locally collected funds, so it's not subject to federal regulation. What I would say is that one of the challenges that we have when we're allocating funding is that in order to be able to make grant fund awards, we have to have applications that are requesting that funding, and we don't have a proportionate number of applications from organizations that are physically located in the south part of the county. We also have a number of organizations that have their physical address in the city of Bremerton, but they serve people throughout the county. So we have, one domestic violence shelter, and that serves everybody in the whole county. We have one shelter that's really focused on serving homeless men, and that is located in Bremerton. If there was interest and desire and an organization that wanted to have more programs in the South County, I think that would be wonderful and it would be very welcome. But until we have applications for that funding and organizations that can support those programs, it's very difficult to put the funding here.
Any other questions? Any others? I don't see any. Well, thank you so much. We appreciate the information, and we also can go online and
We do update our website pretty frequently with new information, and I have a few things that I've said that I would send to you. So in the next couple of days, I'll make sure that I send that over and get it forwarded to you. If you have any other questions or input as you think about what we've said, we're really taking input for the next couple of weeks and interested to know what you think are the particular issues here in the Port Orchard area and South County area. So, thank you.
all right. Thank you. Thank you. All right, we don't have a public hearing, so we'll move on to business item 7A. And our court clerk, Ms. Hunt, is, oh, there you are, is here. And could you tell us about this, please?
Yes. The court is asking the council to adopt an ordinance to increase the base penalty of the civil infraction of POMC to $66.25 plus assessments for a total fine of $136. It was $124. And the reason is the state Supreme Court signed an order increasing the base penalty of similar traffic infractions in Washington effective July 1st, 2015. So tickets that were normally $124 went up to $136. The laws that are adopted locally, such as POMC 10.84.060, inattentive driving, are not automatically increased by the Supreme Court order. Therefore, to be consistent with state law, the court recommends the city increase the base penalty for POMC 10.84.060.
All right, thank you. Council, do you have a...
I move to adopt an ordinance increasing the base penalty for the civil infraction of POMC 10.84.060, inattentive driving, from $60.25 plus assessments to $66.25 plus assessments, for a total fine of $136 even.
Second.
Okay, we do have a second. We'll open the floor for discussion, for comments.
Do you
Mr. Chang?
happen to know what portion of this comes back to the city, if any?
Well, it's kind of convoluted, but on the second page is the formula that says the base penalty, and then the assessments automatically go to the state. Those we can't waive or decrease. So of the $66.25, we do get a portion of that, the penalties also, but from the $66.25, right now, before $35 was taken automatically out from the top, and now it's going to be $43. So if we don't increase the $124 to $136, we're going to be losing from $8.
So did
Per
you just
ticket.
answer how much we're getting? I don't know if I heard that. You said we're going to get more if we pass it, but what are we getting now?
It's kind of difficult because the base penalty and the assessments, the state takes out portions of each of those, and so it's hard to really figure out what they take out, but the court's required in the computer to take out, it used to be $35 that the state automatically gets, and they've increased that to $43. So whatever, we would probably get $20.
So out of the 66, we would get like $23. Is every citation $66, or they only go up to $124 or $130?
They vary.
And what's an assessment? Is that if they were especially inattentive or inattentive and texting, or is that completely separate?
No, it's totally separate. These assessments are for every infraction that is written. So, and the base penalties vary. They're set by the state Supreme Court. And I think the majority of them are like $42, $44.
If we wanted to discourage inattentive driving in the city, could we raise this even higher than what's being proposed? Are we permitted to, or would we get the excess of the amount that we give back to the state?
The more you increase the base penalty, the more that they actually get.
They get a percentage then, okay,
Correct.
Not a flat figure.
But you can raise it to what you want as long as it's within the state law.
Mr. Childs.
Full of stuff tonight, I guess. Is there another definition somewhere other than the definition I'm looking at of inattentive driving? Is there something that says, don't be using texting, don't be using your cell phone, don't be, talking to the people in the back seat, don't be turning around looking or hanging out the window? I mean, I don't know what they all are.
They're
But
separate.
This is
RCWs that cover texting and cell phone usage.
So this inattentive driving, when it says defined, it's to me it's very subjective. So I'm just wondering if there's real definite stuff that the officers work off of.
This penalty is used mainly for when there are accidents and the officers don't see the actual event. and it's also used for plea bargaining for the attorneys. This one isn't reported to Department of Licensing as like a speeding ticket is, and so they use this, and more money goes to the city for this type of citation than speeding or something like that. But RCWs, there are RCWs that cover texting, cell phone usage, all of those. They're separate ones, and they can also be charged with those.
You mean it's under a different statute?
Correct.
So this one doesn't have those under it, it just has this kind of broad definition that
Broad,
officer
yes, it's
applies?
broad for a purpose.
I frankly don't know why I voted for it in the first place, but I sure don't like it. It's puts the officers in my thinking, in a bad position. It's very subjective. I think it's not fair to the citizens. You know, and frankly, I'm going to vote no on this. I don't even like the first one. I'm not going to vote on this one either. And I don't think it's very clear, really, how much money we're actually getting. And I don't even care how much we're getting because I don't even like it. So I'm just telling you.
Do we happen to know how many citations there have been in the past year? I mean, I don't know that this is one of the most frequently cited infractions that we would have. Do you happen to know?
No, but I know it's rarely cited by
Okay.
the officers. It's usually used as a plea bargain offer from the prosecutor to defense attorneys. It can't be offered for anybody that has a CDL because that would be considered masking, so.
Any other questions this side of the house? This side? We ready to vote? All right, then, the motion for consideration was read into the record. And it's to adopt an ordinance to increase the base penalty as read into the record. All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay?
Nay.
All those in favor, raise their right hand, please. Okay, that's what I heard. And all those opposed, right hand. 4-2. So that's, okay, that motion carries.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Who moved this issue and who seconded it?
I moved it. Beck seconded.
Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to business item 7B. Mr. Bond, could you tell us about this one, please?
Yes, thank you. The Department of Community Development has had a very busy first half to 2015. It's facing long turnaround times for permit applications and has 4 land use permit applications which are due to go to the hearing examiner in the second half of this year. Several additional applications requiring hearing examiner review are expected to be submitted in the second half of this year. The department presented the Finance Committee a request for a temporary part-time administrative assistant to help with permit processing and to serve as a clerk to the hearing examiner. The request is being advanced to the City Council following the discussion held with the Finance Committee. A job description has been attached to this staff report. The increased work volume is illustrated through the permit revenue received to date. As of June 30th, the city has received 82% of building permit revenue, 79% of plan review revenue, 72% of land use permit revenue, and 61% of permit technology fee revenue. The department is clearly on pace to exceed revenue projections for the year. If the current pace of development application submittals is maintained, the city will bring in an additional $202,000 more in permit revenue than was budgeted. Though, keep in mind, permit applications do start to slow down towards the end of the year, so don't spend that money until it's come in. The department wishes to use a portion of the one-time revenue to hire a part-time temporary administrative assistant to help the city through the upswing in permit activity and for hearing examiner review. The finance department estimates that a part-time temporary position at 28 hours per week, including salary and benefits, will cost between $3,332 and $3,540 a month, depending on qualifications, COLA, etc. The department proposes that this position be created effective September 1 and extended through at least April 30th, 2016, with council reevaluating the need for the position in late January or early February 2016 to determine if the temporary position should be extended, dependent on building fee revenue and continued permit activity beyond April 30th, 2016. The request is within the guidelines of the city's adopted finance policies, which require identifying priority services, establishing appropriate levels of service, and assuring fiscal stability using available revenue resources. The policy requires that the need for additional hiring must be demonstrated and documented. Funding using one-time revenues or those of limited duration, such as building and planning fees brought about by cyclical economic activity, must be fully disclosed and not relied upon to balance the operating budget. The temporary part-time administrative assistant position complies with the finance policies using one-time revenue to meet current demand caused by increased permit activity and volume. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the hire of a temporary administrative assistant part-time position not to exceed 28 hours per week beginning September 1, 2015 through April 30th, 2016 in accordance with the attached job description.
Okay. Council? Could we get yes.
I move to authorize the hire of a temporary part-time administrative assistant in the Department of Community Development in accordance with the attached job description.
Second it.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion. Mr.
I guess
Potts.
I question whether January and February is the right time to be evaluating if the winter's the slow time. Or if we're going to fund it through April, I guess we need to include it in the budget process this fall and fund through April. But, you know, it's tough to judge if the winter slowdown, if we're in the midst of that. I guess is it based on whether you guys are caught up or not? Is that?
I think it's going to be dependent on where we are in the hearing examiner process and how many more applications have come in that haven't yet been processed. So a lot of what this position is about is clerking hearing examiner hearings and assembling the records and keeping those files. And depending on how quickly we move through them this fall, I think we'll have a very good indication of whether those are going to continue into the summer, or if additional applications have come in that haven't yet been scheduled for a hearing, we'll know whether we need additional months or not in January.
Clausen?
I think Rob raises an awfully good question. So that suggests that mid-year we're going to be making a budget adjustment, assuming that the workload continues and that position goes beyond April? Or are we only going to budget through April, or are we going to budget for a whole year? And
we're going to budget through April, and we're not. I think, and we haven't had our revenue discussion concerning the 2016 budget yet, but we're not going to expect that what happened this year is going to happen again next year. I think the Finance Committee has done a good job of being conservative in their estimates, and if they continue to be conservative and the workload comes in, there will be a revenue associated with the permit volume if this position is needed, and so it will be an unexpected one-time revenue to go with the unexpected workload, and it should balance itself out. It will require a budget amendment mid-year, but the revenue should be there along with the work.
so then it really should be reevaluated later than
April.
in January. You're not really going to know come January whether you're going to have the additional revenue, will you?
Well, and I think it can be reevaluated as part of the budget process too, because we're going to see what happens in the next couple of months. The first of those hearing examiner permits is now moving forward to the point where we have a date scheduled, or we're trying to schedule the dates with the hearing examiner. And I think in 2 months, when we're having serious budget discussions, we're going to have a pretty good indication of whether April is the date, or maybe the budget needs to be adjusted to go to June or later, or I don't think it's going to be any shorter than that, but I think we'll know more as we go through the budget, and we can make adjustments then, and then if we need to, we can reevaluate it early next year.
Then I would think it needs to be made no later than November, so before we adopt the budget in December, we can make the appropriate adjustments.
Sounds reasonable.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I
Ms. Ackley.
just want to make sure I understand that this temporary part-time administrative position is to help with the projects that are moving forward to the hearing examiner. It will not expedite the current 6-week processing time we have for building permits.
Well, it should actually help with that, because currently if these projects go to the hearing examiner, it's the associate planners who are having to clerk their own meeting because they don't have somebody to do that. And so their ability to get through the building permit volume is diminished because they have the responsibility of handling these hearings directly rather than having somebody keeping the records and doing staff reports and assembling packets. So this is going to add capacity to our 2 associate planners by shifting that responsibility to this new temporary position.
How many projects have we had before the hearing examiner this year?
We have not had any this year. We had 1 last year, we had 1 the year before that, and I think 5 in 2012.
Okay, so with that in mind, with what you just said, I don't see that altering the 6 weeks that we have now for a building permit. It may keep it at 6 weeks, because if they were doing their own clerk work for the hearing examiner in the future, that 6 weeks may be extended out to 8 weeks or something.
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, the permit volume, it does tend to peak late spring, early summer, and so I think it's going to go down, a little bit as we get into the later months of summer, but it will certainly help at the beginning of spring if somebody else is handling this responsibility versus having the planners do that next year.
Well, and we talked about this at a fairly lengthy, that we believe it will probably at least hold the line at 6 weeks rather than lose, go to 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And we were under the impression, and I think everybody has agreed to it various times, we don't want to see that slip if we can help it. So this was pretty nearly at least hold our own process for the next 6 weeks, or 6 months, I mean. So anyway, yes, Mr. Chang.
I support the rationale of taking a portion of the unexpected revenue for this purpose. I think one of the details had me a little confused, though, because we're talking about it being a temporary part-time position, but then we're also talking about benefits. So what I'm wondering is, and this may be just a minor detail, have you thought about reimbursing the person through some sort of a consulting rate where we don't have to take care of their benefits?
Well, I think when you're thinking about benefits, you're probably thinking about healthcare costs and other things, and so this is not the full healthcare package that you get if you're a full-time employee. And I looked at Deb.
Ms. Howard, could you come up to the microphone there?
Well, there would be no benefits for this position being part-time and temporary.
I think there is potentially if you have I think and I'm not sure, I don't think there's actually a pension benefit for this in terms of the person.
No, being a temporary position, there's certain guidelines before they would even go into a retirement system, and they wouldn't be, because of right now with it being a temporary position, they wouldn't be getting the medical benefits, even though there's going to be changes the 1st of January that we provide medical benefits for part-time employees, but this is a temporary position, and there's certain guidelines and a formula that's set up if we have part-time individuals that are temporary, like our summer hires. So.
And for those in the video audience, this is Ms. Howard, our HR director. I forgot to introduce you, I'm sorry. Yeah. But any other questions?
So as far as benefits go, I think it's just the regular pay schedule as far as, or the pay that they receive, and that, with Social Security, and that's what it's being referred to.
Any other questions? All right. Seeing none, then we're going to be approving the temporary part-time administrative position that was put before you and we just discussed. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Thank you. That motion carries. Appreciate it.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I would like to request of the staff to put this review of the position on the November Finance Committee agenda so that we don't let it slip by.
Okay. Mr. Bond, would you take note of that, please? Yes, thank you. Right, we're at 7C, adopting the 2015 comp plan. amendment roster. Mr. Bond, could you tell us about this one, please?
Port Orchard Municipal Code Section 1505.060 requires the Development Director to provide the final recommended comprehensive plan amendment agenda to Council for review and consideration before the Planning Commission can take up review of amendments. Once the agenda is adopted, the amendments will be brought to the Planning Commission for a public hearing and consideration. Once the Planning Commission has made its recommendation, the amendments will come back to the City Council for final action. The proposed agenda is attached for Council review. There's only one amendment on the proposed agenda, and it concerns the Tremont Overlay District. On June 15, 2015, an application was filed in anticipation of a Planning Commission recommendation concerning the repeal of the Tremont Overlay District portions of the Comprehensive Plan. On July 20th, 2015, the Planning Commission formally made its recommendation to repeal the Tremont Overlay District regulations and to amend the comprehensive plan to facilitate this repeal. The staff report to the Planning Commission is attached and provides the motion that the Planning Commission approved as well as the findings that were adopted. Staff recommends that the City Council approve the attached agenda as presented to review the one amendment which was filed with the Department of Community Development.
Okay, thank you. Council, get this open for discussion. Does anybody want to make a motion? Yes, sir.
I would move to adopt the attached 2015 Comprehensive Plan Amendment Agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. We will open the floor for discussion and comments. Yes, Mr. Patonson.
Mr. Bond, this just moves this forward as far as the process. We're not actually taking the action tonight to remove the overlay. It's making it part of the public process for the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, based on the language in our comprehensive plan, we couldn't consider repealing the Tremont regulations at this time because we need to make sure that the regulations are consistent with the comprehensive plan. And so the Planning Commission would take up this amendment, would review that section and provide a recommendation, and the council would act in a couple of months on a proposed comprehensive plan amendment, and you may choose not to amend the comprehensive plan at that point, or you may choose to adopt that amendment. At this point, the Planning Commission did complete its review of the Tremont overlay regulations. They did work for probably 3 meetings on the Tremont overlay regulations, and they refined the interim regulations that were approved, but towards the conclusion of refining those regulations, they looked at the product they had and they kind of had the discussion of, do we really need these regulations at all versus relying on the underlying zoning? And so the recommendation was ultimately that council consider repealing those regulations, but would have to amend the comprehensive plan first in order to do that. If a majority on council at this point did not feel comfortable amending the comprehensive plan, council could choose to take a different step, which would be to bring forward the interim regulations for consideration, or bring forward the draft that the Planning Commission had refined, which is probably a slightly better version of what we passed for interim regulations, and you could give us that direction. So if there's not a majority of council members up there now that think that they could possibly support this, I don't want to spend 2 or 3 months working on this, if there's another preference.
Yes,
I'm
Mr.
not going to vote for it, for one. I think that all the work that went into this in 2008, including some of the people even on this diocese, was thoughtful and visionary and looking forward to trying to organize and put together a neighborhood up there that met the needs of the community. And I haven't seen anything change, and if it did, then as you say, maybe we need to see the refined ones and take a look at that. But just throwing this out with the bathwater, I'm not for it. I know we're not doing it now, but I don't see any point in waiting 2 months to do it. I can do it right now.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and myself, having worked on both the 1994 Tremont Corridor Plan and the 2008 Corridor Plan, I strongly recommend that we not move forward with repealing it. The neighborhood had some very strong feelings at the time, and I happen to agree with those. And they were basically trying to protect themselves from big box stores. But I personally will also be voting against moving this forward.
Yes.
I
Ms.
also
Lucarelli.
served on that committee, and I feel strongly like Beck. We worked very hard on that, took a lot of input, and spent a lot of time, I think, compromising then, and came up with, I thought, a good plan. I'll be voting against this.
Any other discussion? Yes, Mr. Chang.
Well, I think I'm on the fence about this issue because we haven't had any public input yet. And what I'd like to hear is how do the residents affected by this change actually feel about it now? I read the report that staff provided to the Planning Commission, and there were several compelling reasons to repeal the interim or overlay district. But I would like to hear from the public, and I think that's the component that I'm missing now.
Mr. Bond, your comment just a few minutes ago was there's several other options available to the council. Could you elaborate just a little bit on, because now it looks, the straw poll is 3-3, which means it's not going anywhere tonight. So is that correct?
Like I mentioned, the Planning Commission did refine a version of the Tremont Overlay District regulations. If you wanted to have a look at that at work study, we could certainly do that. There was a public process on this issue at the Planning Commission. There wasn't a lot of participation or interest in it. I think the thing you've got to remember is that in 2008, you looked at the issue of zoning, including the creation of the business professional zone, and that regulates what uses can happen. Versus the overlay district, which mostly focuses on the aesthetics, landscaping, parking, architectural guidelines. And so nothing is changing about what uses are allowed. What's changing it would be the guidelines that are there that differ from every other area of the city under the same zoning, and which, frankly, we worked to try to make them better, but at the end of the day, we really couldn't find a compelling reason for the specific standards that were there. But I'm happy to bring that forward to work study if you'd like to talk about it, and we can put that on the August.
There's
just Mr. Patonsu, and then.
So what I'm hearing is that the zoning wouldn't allow the box store anywhere, and I'm not familiar with any sites big enough that could accommodate a box store. There isn't a lot of land, developable land on that corridor. There's a few sites. It's basically fronting Tremont, correct?
Yeah, well, it's unclear because there was no map in the development regulations identifying where the regulations actually applied. So we tried to create a map, but the map was mostly along Tremont. There are 2 parcels that are zoned commercial, with 2 vacant parcels zoned commercial, and another parcel that's already developed, the gas station there with the coffee stand, the 76. And other than that, it's all zoned business professional, which is very restrictive in the types of uses that are allowed anyway. And so that business professional is staying in place. It's just the architectural standards.
It's the architectural standards. Yeah. I'm comfortable with moving this forward through a public process, but.
Ms. Ashby?
the other point that I was going to make is last year in our comprehensive plan, we created centers. And the next step with those centers are sub-area plans. And I think that's the more appropriate place to look at this particular corridor. When we originally did this in 1995, it was because of the Harrison Hospital development. That's what started this. That was the big box, okay? So I personally have no problem making our interim ordinance permanent or making it, continuing it until we can develop the sub-area plan. I don't see the necessity of abolishing this corridor at this time.
Okay, any other? No? Okay, well, we have a motion and a second on the floor to adopt a 2015 comp plan amendment roster. So let's vote on that. All those in favor, raise your right hand, please. There's 3. All those opposed, raise your right hand. 3. Okay. Yes.
Motion fails.
No, Mr. Mayor, you get to vote.
On land use?
Under RCW 3523-201, the mayor shall have a vote only in the case of a tie of the votes of the council members. And this is not an ordinance.
That's just
Okay, that's what I was curious about, the ordinance portion of it. Okay. Okay, I cast my vote in favor. In favor. Okay. All right. Let's move on to 7D. And Miss Archer Parsons is here. Could you help us with this one, please?
Certainly. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and members of the city. An advertisement for bid was published in the June 12, 2015 edition of the Port Orchard Independent, and the bid documents were uploaded to the Washington Builders Exchange on the same date. By the July 17, 2015 bid opening deadline, the City of Port Orchard received 3 qualified bids as follows. All applicable taxes were included in the prices. Zimic Construction Company, LLC, for $396,460.50. Nordland Construction Northwest for $405,650. And Beasley Incorporated for $512,726.74. Upon review by city staff, it was determined that Zimic Construction LLC was the lowest responsible bidder at $396,460.50, all applicable taxes included in that price. With this project, the City of Port Orchard will construct segment number 4 of the overall Bay Street pedestrian multimodal pathway project, being the bike/pedestrian bridge across Blackjack Creek using state and local funding. At this time, staff recommends that the City Council authorize the mayor to execute contract number 062-15 with Zimic Construction, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $396,460.50 for the construction of segment number 4 of the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project.
Thank you. Yes. Ms. Lucarelli had her hand up first.
I move to authorize the mayor to execute contract number 062-15 with Zimic Construction, LLC, in an amount not to exceed $396,460.50 for the construction of segment number 4 of the Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project.
Mr. Clausen.
Second.
Thank you. All right, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion. Mr. Clausen.
Mr. Mayor, appears that you and I were the only ones that received a memo from our treasurer, Mr. Martin, who described the fund that could be used to make up the shortfall of $88,000. I think it'd be best if I just read. I'm unable to attend the council meeting, but wanted to give you information regarding the Street Capital Project Fund number 304, funding the additional $88,000 Bay Street Pedestrian Pathway Project segment number 4. The Street Capital Project Fund number 304 provided funding for various federal grants, including city match of $300,214, but not used this year. In addition, the budget contemplated an ending year fund balance of $324,000. Together, these two amounts make up nearly the current fund balance as of June 30th in the monthly treasurer's report of $724,000. As such, Fund 304 has adequate fund balance should council approve the contract with Zimic Construction for continued construction of the pathway projects. So just so everybody's aware. That
yes, thank you.
Thank
you for reading that.
Make up that shortfall.
Thank you for reading that into the record. Yes, Mr. Charles.
I was just going to say I am so happy to see this going in, but I would say I would have been nice to have a picture of the bridge that we're buying drawing or something so that we could even get more excited, or if it's something that we could talk about any changes or possibly amendments to it, that would have been nice. And by changes, I mean enhancements that maybe we could go forth into the community and find people that might be willing to provide lighting for it, for example, or different things, but we don't have a picture, so just saying. But I'm voting for it.
Sounds like a change order nightmare to me. I think we build the bridge and don't worry about lighting later.
Does the original
Okay.
bid have a drawing?
The original bid is based on the bid drawings that were prepared by Norm Olson and Associates as part of the overall pathway project. There will be submittals that will be forthcoming with the contractor if the contract is awarded, so that we can value engineer everything and make sure that what they're providing is actually going to meet all of our requirements that we have.
So then we will see something.
We
The
will
council
be-
will actually see something and be able to weigh in on that then?
Once we start fabrication, we're under a very tight timeline due to the state funding to try and get this completed, since the Department of Commerce money is only good to the end of this year. And it does take quite a while to fabricate something of this size once they do set down with the contractor.
And aren't we under a fish window situation also to get
Are.
to set the bridge? So, but still, we'll get to see something, right?
I'll make sure Mark brings something maybe at a work study for you so you can at least see
All
what's
right,
coming
okay.
I
forward.
think Rob raised a good point. We're authorizing the letting of a contract, and they have submitted their bid based on the drawings that they have. And if you want to make changes to it, I'm sure there'll be a change order involved.
Yeah.
Bring your checkbook if you want to make changes.
It would
Good
be
point.
nice to see it before this, but
Yeah.
the fact is, we're moving down the rails.
Okay, other comments? Okay, the motion is to approve this contract with Zemek Construction Company LLC. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you, that motion carried. All right, appreciate that. Approval of public event. Ms. Reinerson, could you tell us about this one, please?
Yeah. So, good evening, Mayor, Council. So, on behalf of the 125th City of Port Orchard Anniversary Committee, I have put in an application requesting use of city streets, parking lots, and right-of-ways.
Could you speak up,
Oh.
get a little closer and speak up louder? I'm having trouble hearing you.
So, the 125th, does that sound better?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the 125th anniversary celebration is a kid-friendly, family-oriented celebration of the City of Port Orchard's 125th year anniversary of incorporation of being a city-town. This event will benefit the community by allowing a mix of generations to join together to learn about the history of our community. The celebration includes a pancake breakfast feed, free shuttle service, tours of City Hall and the Carlisle 2, marble tournament, and much, much more. The event is scheduled for Saturday, September 5th, 2015, beginning with a pancake feed at 8 a.m. in front of City Hall and a closing ceremony at the Port Orchard Waterfront Gazebo that includes cake and a street dance until 8 p.m. The committee is requesting use of the closure of Prospect Street, and I do apologize, I should have said at the beginning of my presentation that there is a revised staff report that indicates that the committee is no longer seeking request to close Frederick Avenue. City departments, fire department, and Kitsap Transit have reviewed the application and have submitted their recommendations and or comments. Staff and the committee recommends the council to approve this application. And I believe there are a few committee members here in the audience. If not, then the chair of the committee is here as well. So that's what I have to report.
Okay, what's your pleasure? Ms. Lucarelli.
I move to approve the public event application from the 125th City of Port Orchard Anniversary Committee, allowing them to hold their event using city streets and/or right-of-ways, including the street closure of Prospect Street as presented.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Open the floor for discussion and comments or questions. Yes.
I'm going to vote for it, and I'd say let the party begin.
Any other comments? All right, seeing none, then we're going to be approving a public events application for the City of Port Orchard 125th anniversary celebration. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay. Okay, thank you. That motion carries. That concludes our business items for tonight. So we'll move on to reports of committees. Finance Committee, Mr. Clausen.
The Finance Committee is scheduled for August 25th, 5:30 here at City Hall.
Public Properties, Mr. Cartwright. Does anybody have a report for Mr. Cartwright?
Next meeting?
Yes.
Yes, we're not, the Economic Development, Tourism, and the Public Property meetings are not meeting in August. Both of those meetings will be in September 14th. Public Property at 8:30 and Economic Development directly following.
Okay, thank you. Utility and Sewer Advisory, Mr. Patonsu.
In your mailboxes, you should have seen the minutes from the last meeting, but I'll hit the overview of them. We reviewed the operating statements, and from an operating standpoint, we're not doing horribly, but as we know from the gap analysis, our need is from a capital facilities problem. We continued our discussion related to commercial sewer rates. In particular, it was brought to our attention from the Utilities Department, the public market. Because our commercial sewer rates are driven by fixtures, our market downtown is classified just like the Albertsons store. And so when we started reviewing similar, stores, there was a big disparity in what some folks are paying for sewer rates versus other when we compared their water usage. Very substantial. So we're continuing to research this and what the solution is. Potentially, we step away from the fixture count. When we base it on a winter water use, that could be a lengthy process to come to some conclusions on that. In the short term, we've got a number of classifications that have been added over the years, and we thought maybe we need to come up with a classification for our public market. It's kind of a unique facility. We did it for bed and breakfast. We've done it for other facilities, so more to come on that. And then we had a discussion on the utility assistance programs, and on the back of that agenda, there's 9 different currently programs or services we offer our citizens to, from monthly payments to purchasing a low flow toilet for someone. So if you missed that, flip your agenda over or your minutes over. It was on the back of it, all the different programs we offer. Our next meeting isn't until September, and I understand there's a conflict with the commissioners from West Sound on the August 19th. Sewer Advisory Committee meeting, and maybe tonight we can pick a different date.
Okay, thank you. Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
The committee will be meeting next month at a date to be determined. I need to call Brandy and set that up.
Okay, thank you. Chimes and Lights, Ms. Lucarelli.
So Chimes and Lights will start meeting in September. We've purposely waited until after the 125th party because so many of our volunteers and staff are really tied up. But I'm proposing that we meet Mondays at 3:30 on September 14th and 28th, October 19th, and November 16th. I'll confirm this again the next meeting. But those are the days that we're looking for. So that's meeting Mondays, 3:30 here at City Hall in the Geiger meeting. Oh, no, that's Carolyn Powers. Forgive me.
Anything on waterfront plan, Mr. Childs?
Nothing reported on that, and KEDA, nothing to report on that.
Okay, thank you. 125th Anniversary Committee, Ms. Reinerson, do you have any? Or our chairperson.
The chair always does a much better presentation than I do, so I figured I'd give her the opportunity since we have Well, we're just really close to finalizing everything. I confirmed with Janice Marisick tonight at Seroptimus that the Rotary is definitely on board for the street dance and what they're going to be doing, and the DJ's already been hired for that. And we're planning for at least 600 people to eat cake. So we want to have everybody come down. If we get 1,500, it's first come, first serve, obviously. So just
We
come
won't
down.
be able to let them eat cake then, really, not all of them anyway.
We have a great advertising program laid out with the Port Orchard Independent. They have given us a quote, and the committee has reviewed that. So we will be having publication advertising going out to even reach Seattle and Tacoma and up north to Jefferson County. So hopefully we'll have some out-of-towners come in and help celebrate our anniversary party.
Okay.
We're going to pack City Hall out here.
All right. That
Okay.
sounds like fun.
Any questions anybody has? John, we just need your date or your hours of operation for the Carlisle, and that you have confirmed staff to support that.
Want
What are your hours of operation?
what you want for the hours of operation.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
Blank check.
Well, from our grand opening ceremony here, for our opening ceremonies, we're going to open the pavilion at 11. So I would suggest 11 for an opening of that until 5-ish. Is that workable? Okay.
Got it.
Got it.
Okay. Any other questions? I still want y'all to buy a T-shirt now. It's got that Centennial logo on it.
Can you bring those the next time you come, the next council meeting? Can you bring at least one of each color so we can...
I could have brought a whole bunch of them tonight. They were at Seroptimus.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah. The Independent is definitely going to be doing mugs. The mugs will have the Centennial logo on one side, and they'll have the Independent logo on the other side. And so I'm not sure how those are going to be distributed, if it's given away. Bob, do you know?
I do know at the September luncheon, they're sponsoring it because it's the 125th, so everybody that comes to the September luncheon is supposed to get one of those mugs.
Okay, so I'm expecting all of you at the Chamber Luncheon in September then, and you'll get your free mug then. Okay. Thank you all. I don't have anything else. We're just looking forward to a fun celebration.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. This just that the Independent is 125 years
125
oldest
years old.
newspaper in the county.
In the county.
Along with us being the oldest city in the county.
Yes. And they're working on the special publication now. And I just need a letter from you, a brief little letter from what you see now as changes and what you think your vision would look like in another 25 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay. Outside agency, Miss Ashby.
Yes, the the KRCC held a retreat this afternoon with our new management consultant firm, Triangle and Associates. And I think it went very well. We started short-term and long-term strategic planning and developing our work plan at least through the end of this year. And we made good progress through the end of 2016. So it was well attended, and I do thank everyone that was there. It was a nice meeting, and we are not having our regular meeting on August 4th. We will convene again the first Tuesday in September. And there has not been a PSRC meeting since we last gathered.
Okay. Any other special agency reports? All right. Seeing none, then I'll go ahead and start my report. On Saturday, I was at the Elton Goodwin Memorial Foundation picnic day, and it was down on the field, the ball field at South Kitsap High School. And for those of you that aren't familiar with the Elton Goodwin Memorial Foundation, it's a foundation empowering kids one pitch at a time. And it's a family has organized it, and let me just read a little bit about it. The Elton Goodwin Memorial Foundation has received preliminary approval from the South Kitsap School Board to privately erect a sports memorial garden on the campus of South Kitsap High School. to be located in an area behind the baseball field backstop. These beautiful landscape gardens will not only celebrate the proud athletic tradition of South Kitsap, but will also beautify a highly visible yet pretty poorly maintained area of gravel and dirt is what's there right now. And could you put this up real quick on there? Because it's an artist rendition of what they have in mind. That one right there. Thank you. And they had this picnic day. Unfortunately, I think Seafair cut into them a bit, and the weather was chilly.
Historic Homes Tour.
And historic home tours and farmers market. This happens, and so it wasn't as well attended as they had hoped, but I was down there for about 3.5 hours, and I thought it was fairly well attended. And if their vision looks similar to that, it would be a beautiful addition to the South Kitsap and the ball field. And then also keep in mind that along with this being a memorial to the coach, it's also a memorial to all the people that ever played on that field. And we have some very historic teams clear back into the 60s. So, and there'll be bricks you can buy and all of that sort of thing. So I was just encouraging those folks that maybe that didn't meet their expectation, but there's other things that they can do, and they're going to continue to work on that foundation's program. So anyway, then Sunday, I attended the Mustangs on the Waterfront, and they're a lot of friends of mine and friends of Port Orchard. And I have never seen it rain so hard in Port Orchard down there in July. I felt so sorry. As a matter of fact, I have an old Mustang convertible that I wasn't able to clean in time to take it there, and I'm sure glad I didn't have it down there because it leaks. And it would have leaked that day. And a lot of those beautiful cars were hydro tested. They kept, we were still down there at 4:30. Giving away lots and lots of beautiful trophies. And I actually got to do a mayor's choice, and it was Mr. Peterson's 1967 428 Cobra Jet 4-speed fastback, and it was one beautiful car. If you remember what Calypso Coral looked like, Miss King's blouse is almost Calypso Coral, and I called it Omaha Orange, and I got corrected in a hurry. It's Calypso Coral. And anyway, this car was just stunning and beautiful. And I thought by making that the mayor's choice that I would at least get to drive it on the track, and he goes, not ever going to happen. Nope. And I don't blame him. I wouldn't let me drive it either. So anyway, beautiful car, beautiful show down there. There was 214 cars. I apologized for the rain, and I said, we'll never let that happen again. When you come back next year, we'll have sunshine. I promised them that. So one last thing for the mayor's report. I just wanted to read this to you. I received this letter on the 21st. Dear Mayor Mathis, congratulations. The South Kitsap Water Reclamation Facility is receiving the 2014 Wastewater Treatment Plant Outstanding Performance Award. Of approximately 300 wastewater treatment plants statewide, yours is one of 127 that achieve full compliance with its National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, NPDES permit in 2014. And that we're going to be talking again about it, and there will be an official plaque presentation at some point from Department of Ecology. But I just wanted to jump the gun and thank our partners at the sewer plant for once again showing that we're pretty special here, and we're taking care of business as far as the pollution discharge is concerned. So I wanted to thank them for that. And let's see, I think that concludes my comments, and we'll move on to staff comments. And let's see, Mr. Bond. Oh, I'm sorry, Ms. Parsons. Do you have any comments for your department?
Nothing to report.
Okay. Now, Mr. Bond.
Nothing to report, though I think we have a brief executive session that.
Yes.
We need an executive session tonight for prospective litigation, RCW 423110, sub 1, sub I. 5 minutes.
All right. Ms. Rennerson, do you have any report for us?
I do not.
Okay, as our counselor ably read into the record, we do have an executive session, and we believe 5 minutes. And we're going to go into executive session now. We'll come back to adjourn the meeting, but we do not anticipate any decisions to be made after this. So thank you very much for attending tonight, and we will go into executive session at this point.